The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the cracked pavement of the lonely bus stop where Emily sat, her white dress soaked and clinging to her trembling frame. The lace veil, once a symbol of hope, was now a sodden weight tangled in her hair, and her mascara streaked down her cheeks like black rivers of grief. She was a bride abandoned, left on the side of a desolate road with nothing but a small suitcase and a heart shattered beyond repair. Hours ago, she had stood at the altar, waiting for a man who never came. The whispers of the guests, the pity in their eyes, and the cold finality of her fiancé's text, "I can't do this," had driven her to flee, to escape the suffocating weight of rejection. Now, at this forgotten bus stop, she sat alone, the world blurring through her tears. Across the street, under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, Tom watched her from the doorway of his small auto repair shop. His hands, calloused and stained with grease, gripped the edge of the doorframe as he hesitated. He was no stranger to broken things, cars, engines, lives. But something about this woman, fragile yet defiant in her ruined wedding gown, stirred a quiet ache in his chest. Tom was a mechanic, not a hero, a man who lived paycheck to paycheck, scraping by in a world that didn't care for men like him. Yet, as the rain pounded harder and Emily shivered, he couldn't look away. He saw what her fiancé never could, a woman whose strength shone through her pain, a soul worth saving. Tom crossed the street, his work boots splashing through puddles, and approached her cautiously. "Hey," he said softly, his voice rough but kind. "You can't stay out here. You'll freeze." Emily looked up, startled, her eyes wide and wary. She clutched her suitcase tighter, as if it were her only anchor. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice barely audible over the rain. Tom shook his head, offering a small, disarming smile. "You don't look fine. Come inside. At least get warm." She hesitated, pride warring with desperation, but the cold won. She followed him into the shop, where the smell of oil and metal mingled with the faint warmth of a space heater humming in the corner. Inside, Tom handed her a clean shop towel to dry her face and a chipped mug of instant coffee. The shop was cluttered but cozy, tools scattered across workbenches, a radio softly playing old country tunes. Emily sat on a stool, her dress dripping onto the concrete floor, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of safety. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice thick with suspicion. Tom shrugged, leaning against a workbench. "Seen a lot of broken things in my life. Don't like seeing people left out in the rain, that's all." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Emily's throat tighten. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything. Emily's story spilled out in fragments as the night wore on. She'd been with her fiancé, James, for 5 years, building a life around his promises of forever. He was charming, successful, the kind of man everyone admired. But behind closed doors, he was distant, critical, always pointing out her flaws, her small-town roots, her quiet nature, the way she never seemed enough. She'd spent years trying to mold herself into the woman he wanted, losing pieces of herself in the process. The wedding was supposed to be their new beginning. But that morning, he'd left her with nothing but a text and a church full of witnesses to her humiliation. "I wasn't enough," she whispered, staring into her coffee. "I never was." Tom listened, his jaw tight. He didn't know much about love, but he knew about fixing things, about seeing value where others saw junk. "Sounds like he's the one who wasn't enough," he said, his voice steady. "Some people only see what's shiny on the surface. They miss the real stuff, the good stuff." Emily looked at him, searching his face for pity, but found only sincerity. For the first time in years, someone saw her, not the polished version she'd tried to be, but the real Emily, raw and aching and beautiful in her vulnerability. The first challenge came the next morning when Emily realized she had nowhere to go. Her apartment was leased in James's name, her savings drained for the wedding, and her family was scattered across states, too far to reach. She'd planned to start a new life with James, but now she was adrift. Tom, without hesitation, offered her the small room above his shop. "It's not much," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Just a cot and a hot plate. But it's yours till you figure things out." Emily protested, insisting she couldn't impose, but Tom was firm. "You're not imposing. You're surviving. Let me help." The room was sparse, with peeling wallpaper and a single window overlooking the street, but it was a lifeline. Emily settled in, her wedding dress folded away in her suitcase like a ghost of her past. Days turned into weeks, and she began helping Tom in the shop, organizing invoices, answering the phone, even learning to change oil. She was surprised by how much she enjoyed the work, the satisfaction of fixing something tangible. Tom, in turn, found himself looking forward to her quiet presence, her quick laugh, the way her eyes lit up when she mastered a new task. They were an unlikely pair, a mechanic and a runaway bride, but they fit. The second challenge was the town's gossip. The small community buzzed with rumors about the jilted bride living above Tom's shop. Some said she was trouble, others pitied her, but all agreed she didn't belong with a man like Tom, who was too poor, too rough around the edges. Emily overheard the whispers at the grocery store, felt the stares when she walked down the street. It stung, reminding her of James's rejection, but Tom was unfazed. "Let him talk," he said one evening, tossing a wrench onto the workbench. "They don't know you. They don't know us." His confidence bolstered her, but the gossip planted seeds of doubt. Could she really start over here, with him? The third challenge was deeper, more personal. Emily's self-worth had been eroded by years of James's criticism, and though Tom's kindness was a balm, she struggled to believe she deserved it. Late at night, she'd lie awake, haunted by the fear that she was a burden, that Tom would tire of her as James had. One evening, after a long day in the shop, she broke down, tears streaming as she confessed her fears. "I'm not worth this," she said, her voice shaking. "You're wasting your time on me." Tom knelt beside her, his hands steady on her shoulders. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and fierce. "You're not broken. You're not less. You're more than enough, and I see it every damn day." His words cracked something open in her, a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. Their bond grew, quiet and unspoken, built on shared silences and small acts of care. Tom taught Emily how to rebuild an engine, his patience endless as she fumbled with tools. She taught him how to cook something other than canned soup, laughing when he burned the rice. They faced practical challenges too. When the shop's furnace broke, they spent a freezing week bundling up in blankets, working side by side to keep the business running. When Emily's suitcase was stolen from the shop, Tom drove 3 hours to buy her new clothes, brushing off her thanks with a gruff, "You needed them." Each hurdle, big or small, wove them closer, their trust deepening like roots in fertile soil. The turning point came 6 months later, when James reappeared. He showed up at the shop, polished in his expensive suit, claiming he'd made a mistake. "I was scared," he said, his eyes pleading. "I love you, Emily. Come back." Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding. Part of her, the part still bruised by his rejection, wanted to believe him, to slip back into the life she'd known. But as she looked at Tom, wiping his hands on a rag, watching her with quiet strength, she saw the truth. James had never seen her, not really. He'd wanted a version of her that didn't exist. Tom saw her as she was, flawed, resilient enough. "I'm not going back," she said, her voice steady. "I'm home." James left, his promises fading into the hum of the shop's radio. That night, Tom and Emily sat on the shop's roof, sharing a beer under the stars. "You sure about this?" Tom asked, his voice soft. "This life, it's not fancy." "I'm not fancy." Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "It's real," she said. "That's all I need." Years later, the shop was still there, but it was different, brighter, with a fresh coat of paint and a sign that read Tom and Emily's Auto Repair. They'd built a life together, not perfect but honest, filled with laughter and grease-stained hands. Emily had found her strength, not in becoming someone else, but in embracing who she was. Tom had found purpose, not in fixing cars, but in loving someone who saw him too. The town's gossip had faded, replaced by respect for the couple who'd turned broken pieces into something whole. The rain still fell sometimes, but it didn't feel cold anymore. Emily and Tom faced it together, knowing that love wasn't about perfection. It was about seeing what others couldn't and choosing to stay.